to be honest. That would have involved for me something that I thought would be bad luck, which would be transposing Athena. And I'm not sure what I believe, but particularly late at night, I didn't want to do that. That's what it came down to. I think the question of belief is a really interesting one in this text, and the question of belief in a pantheon like this one. I think it's a mistake to imagine that belief involved me all the time, no other, and if you ever even think about anybody else, I'm going to damn you to hell. That's sort of the Abrahamic version of belief. I don't think that was the version of belief here. I think it was more like the way you believe I was raised to pray to St. Jude when he lost something, because he was a patron of lost causes. I'm not sure lost causes translates to where I leave the keys, but that's how I thought about it. And did I believe in St. Jude? When I needed to find my keys, yeah. Yeah. Other times maybe not.
Any more questions? Any? I can't see too well, so you? Yeah.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
I just had a really quick fact check about the end of Troy, and I just wanted to point out that actually the most famous refugee of Troy, Aeneas, went on to found Rome.
Right, I know.
Which
yeah.
took out the Greeks. So there was I think that I totally agree that there's a safety in the Romans, but there is the most, there's that too. So.
Yeah. And he appears in the Iliad. I'm sure you know in a few scenes, but and he is the backdated founder of Rome, and therefore that's a really interesting thing. But it's Virgil's deal. It's a little later than the Iliad. But to me, I've written a lot about Joseph E. Smith and the Mormon scripture. There's a lot of parallels in the way that cultures give themselves a backdated genealogy, and Aeneas gives Rome a backdated genealogy to a culture they were, as we know, profoundly ambivalent about. Rome on the Greeks was, I suppose, a bit like Imperial Japan on China. It's like, there are the great Greeks from back then, and then there are these people, these nouveau riches that we have to deal with that, and we don't particularly like. They're really tricky. That's also, I suppose, something that can happen only because of the safety valve in the story, that it is pro-Greek, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody has to get wiped out. That's roughly the shape of things. But as if you've ever followed a movie sequel, no, so-and-so escaped. They found our new place, which has plenty of power, but not the same ancient grandeur that we're looking for. So we make one.
Maybe we can do a couple more questions. I'll just put my hand there, and so whoever yells out first.
I'll go.
Go ahead. Yeah.
You mentioned these light bulbs, sound light bulbs, the God's thing. It actually reminded me, within one of the commentaries where he talks about this as to modern readers, you read a lot of the novels, it's like the God's directly to read, right? And it's really in some way, or not in a way of the spirit of God or something, or really gives them extra strength. And it seems like to us it seems like, that's unfair, they're not doing anything, they're not just doing. But then the commentary made the point that it was kind of it's like the gods that you're reading that really not is because you're so strong, because you're so fast, or I don't know,
Yeah, I suppose that would work if you don't want to take the responsibility for either your success or your failure. And when success means stabbing another highborn man to death, you might not want to take responsibility for it. That's a serious act in a culture like this. But so let me chew on that. But just offhand, the scene that often gets downplayed, and I tried not to downplay, is Athena's role in Hector's death. First of all, Hector cannot beat Achilles. That's just something like a law of physics. Achilles is deeply god blood, and there are degrees of god blood in this text. And Achilles is deep god blood. Everything god blood, including horses, because 2 out of 3 of Achilles' horses are godly. Everything like that is bigger, cleaner, stronger, faster. They're Nexus 6 stuff, basically. And Hector is up against a Nexus 6. He will not win. He cannot win. But Athena, at the last minute, purely to play with him, appears as his cousin on his death scene and says, after everyone else in Troy has cowered back behind the walls because they don't want Achilles to kill him, and his cousin says, I'll stand with you. And she's just this is what I mean by Athena is not nice, even though she's the most appealing of the gods. And he misses with his first throw, and he says, okay, hand me the other spear, please. And she's gone. And I have a hard time seeing what Hector did in terms of, wasting his potential or let alone anything moral, because it's usually not something moral. I don't think he's transgressed any aristocratic codes. I don't think, like his brother Paris, that he's failed to fulfill his duties. I don't think there's any way to explain that other than we've been nice to the enemy characters so far, but now we're going to have a little fun through Athena with the big death scene.
I wonder if you think that the Greek audience found that funny.
Yes, hilarious. But they may have cried for Hector too. You can do both. I mean, look, in the 80s I was a grad student, and I went to see the movie Aliens with a bunch of other grad students, and everybody cheered wildly when that corporate caricature, Burke, I think his name was stuffed into a closet to be eaten alive by an alien. 5 years later, half those people were in finance. I mean, we're not as naive as a lot of literary criticism makes us out to be.
All right, maybe we can do another question. I don't know. Get somebody back there, yeah?
Do you think this text, we have lost parts of this text? Because I have only read your version. So it starts in the middle of the story and it finishes way before it. And in between it jumps phases, like it jumps years or... So did you get a feeling of that when you read the original version? That maybe
I'm not a scholar of the original, of the provenance, let's say, of the text. But as far as I know, that is the classic design of the Iliad. It doesn't do the Trojan horse story. It doesn't do the Trojan women story. It doesn't do the details of the slaughter and enslavement when the city falls. I think partly because the audience knew very well what that end game was. It starts well into the last year of the war, and it covers a few weeks in the war. It doesn't attempt to cover the whole war, and yes, as far as that's what I did, because as far as I know, and I'm not Moses Finley here, but as far as I know, that's the structure of every version of the original that we have. Yeah, I mean, it's a problem with ancient literature, right? And in fact, my wife was a classicist. Pointed out this classicist cartoon which said, I don't know, what was it? Somebody says to a dog, only 1% of classical literature has survived, and the dog cries or something. So yeah, the losses have been terrible. Just in terms of poetry, the scraps of Archilochus that we have are incredible, and the idea that we don't have the rest is really sad. Incredible, and also, by the way, a good lesson that high culture, low culture doesn't really work here. He's about as down and dirty as you want, and everybody loved him.
I guess we can do, I don't know, Michael, do we have, should we wrap it up or do one more? Where's Michael? I can't hear him.
Probably about time.
There.
Yeah, but we should probably call it.
Okay, so one last question, with this we'll wrap it up, just so we kind of feel that. Yeah, you.
I had a question about the Fletcher character. Is there anything, when you were writing in character, were there any sort of tricks or rhetorical ploys that you used to distinguish his voice from yours specifically? You talked about sort of readapting your backwards Californian dialect, and as someone from San Bernardino, I'm very,
you
very
outranked me in
familiar
that. Okay.
with the inland backwater, you know, in my case, brown redneck, dialect. But you know, what were ways that you wrote in character dialectically, or to distinguish it from your own style, other than just taking away some of the academic vernacular?
It's it was an interesting process. The only part I would question there is my style, the John Dolan style. I was writing mainly book reviews for Exile, taking pot shots at people who were famous when I wasn't from far, far away, which is, as far as I know, is a book reviewer's true job. So that style was also weaponized, but it was weaponized in a pedantic way, which I hope to God was not the normal voice I use in conversation, though I'm not entirely sure of it. And Brecher was, well, there's a guy down the street named Kenny Tamplin. I tried to remember how Kenny Tamplin talked. There was this guy who once held a knife to my throat called Pat Hardy. I wanted to see what did Pat Hardy talk like.
Why do you hold the knife to you?
I was wearing, my mother decked me out in this sort of cowboy tie, braided leather tie. He quite rightly found that offensive. I was only 10 years old. So I tried to remember how those guys talked, and then I went for hyperbole, and I went for some Brecher characteristics. You know, there were times when Brecher was supposedly a Pentecostal, and I obviously am not from a Pentecostal background, so I actually went to a Pentecostal service and tried to get a sense of things. I tried to make a backstory for him that was totally unrelated to mine, but plausible. And don't kid a kidder, I know how to lie. You bring these things up as if he's embarrassed about them. You bring them up as if he'd rather not talk about them because people listen more carefully. Aha! Brecher has two sisters, I see. You see that because I wanted you to see that. That's how writing works. And between the hyperbole and the remembered sort of, sailboat backyard salamander hunting slang, that was the genesis of Brecher. And the massive, healthy lack of respect, I would say, as the key value. Like, those kids had no respect for anybody. And the more grandeur people put on, the less they respected them. It was very easy to adapt that if you're talking about American war pundits.
I was going to say, and it fooled, among others, Dick Cheney's Obi-Wan Kenobi and Libby Scooter's Yoda, Victor Davis Hanson from the National Review. Who called the fire department on Barry Brecher for burning his grave. That was funny. This is the guy who was the brain bug for the Iraq War, apparently, and it really says a lot, doesn't it?
Well, I should say I'm also an alumnus of UC Santa Cruz, and anything. Like, it's amazing to imagine what he must have been like as an undergrad.
Somebody should talk up. He was at what was then the hippie campus, at its most flower child thing. Either he was celibate and miserable, except I don't think he was. And I'd like to know what he did get up to.
All right, so anything else? Or I think we should, I think it's enough, and thank you everybody so much. Appreciation of John Dolan, my favorite writer, so thank you very much. Buy the book, thank you to Michael Pollack for doing a great job putting this together. Thank you to the KGB Bar for hosting this, and it's great.